mtima umo, tiende pamozi ndi 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 mtima umo.
Hello everybody and welcome to MTN Teleschool. Once again, my name is Anton Samanenga. I'm here to help you prepare or as you revise for your final exams. And today marks my last day in mathematics, but today I'm not doing mathematics as I've been doing since Monday. I'm going to look at some of the issues or things that can really help you to prepare for your final exams. And in this case, we're just simply talking about examination tips in mathematics and how best you can score an A+ in mathematics by following some of these tips that are very, very important for you as you prepare for the final exams. Right, so please, as you watch, remember to tag your friends and families so that they can also join in watching. And once again, like I always said, I'm excited to be in this on this forum, on this platform that has been helped us to communicate between you and ourselves through the comments that you've been dropping. We value the support and please continue doing so. And so we go straight into some of the tips that can help you prepare for your final exams and pass mathematics with flying colors. And some of the instructions could be: 1. Read the instructions carefully. This tip seems to be very, very obvious, but it's one of the tips that is overlooked by a number of students out there. There is always a rush to answering questions even without understanding what the instructions are asking you to do. So it's important that before you begin any examination, you read the instructions carefully so that you understand what you are being asked. So some of the points that we can bring out on reading the instructions carefully are as follows. 1, you need to answer all questions. This means answer as many as you can, and only by getting all of them right will you obtain full marks. Now, in mathematics, which paper are you expected to answer all questions? We have two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is a non-calculator version, meaning you don't use a calculator at all. The questions and the questioning do not really need you to use a calculator, but you can just work them out without a calculator. So, in paper 1, we have 23 questions, and you need to answer all the questions in this paper. But this does not mean that answering them wrongly will score you marks. You need to answer all the questions and try by all means to get all of them right, and this will enable you to obtain full marks out of this. So that is very, very important to read the instructions as you begin your examination. The other tip that we can look at is write your answers in the spaces provided on the question paper. This means that you are not allowed to use any other paper. So again, let me refer to paper 1 in mathematics. There are spaces that have been left for all your answers, and you're supposed to write all your answers in the spaces that have been provided. Do not go into an examination room. This is obvious instructions, even on the question papers is there. Do not go in an examination classroom with other papers that you need to use in order for you to answer the questions. Use the spaces provided on the question paper, and this means that you are not allowed to use any other paper in an examination. Please stay away from doing that once you go to write your mathematics paper. Right, we can move on to another point, and this is the third point on reading the instructions carefully. It states in the exam, you should check that you have been given the correct paper and how long you have to do it. It's very important that you know even the time. So for paper 1, mathematics paper 1, it's given 2 hours. you have 2 hours to answer all the questions. For paper 2, you have 2 hours, 30 minutes for you to answer all the questions. So you check on the time so that you can plan your writing of the exam in such a way that you have not disadvantaged yourself in any way. So try to spread your time equally between the questions. If you do this, it will avoid the desire to rush the paper or spend too much time on some questions and not finish the paper. Why is it important to allocate time or spread your time equally? The number of marks that are allocated at the end of each question will give you even a hint or an insight of how many minutes, how much time you need to spend on each and every question. For example, if the question is only 1 mark, you don't need to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes on a question that can only attract 1 mark. You need to divide your time. Move on and see other questions which you can answer. Many people fail to pass mathematics not because they are unable, but it's because of the way they plan their time. How is their time management? How have they planned their time? All those things really matter when you're writing an exam. So we are saying avoid the desire to rush the paper or spend too much time on some questions and not finish the paper. If you don't finish the paper, you disadvantage yourself because there could be other questions that you could have selected in the exam and you simply fail to answer them because of poor time management. Now, when you look at the second point or bullet states, many mathematics papers start with fairly straightforward questions, especially in paper 1. You find that they'll ask you straightforward questions, simplify, evaluate, and all that stuff. That does not mean that the question, the exam, that the idea behind that is to give you the confidence to answer even some question that may be a bit complex as you go on. So what are we saying here? We are saying if this is the case, work through them in order to build up your confidence. Do not ignore these questions that seem to be straightforward. They will still give you a number of marks that can help you pass your mathematics with flying colors. So just go through them so that you can build the confidence, and as the confidence builds up, then you'll be able even to tackle questions that are a bit complex, that are a lot, that are involving, that require a number of steps for you to arrive at your final answer. And so the next bullet also says it all to say, do not overlook any part of a question. And maybe let me pause there first. Do not overlook any part of the question. Some questions, for example, we may have question 1 and it has got parts. For example, we may have question 1A and question 1B and question 1C. You answer all the question parts under question 1. Don't just say on question 1, I'm going to answer only A, and then you leave B, C, D, and maybe E, depending on how you've been asked that question. So that's why they're trying to caution you there to say, do not overlook any part of a question. And please double check that you have seen everything on each paper. And there is also a tendency of some students out there not checking through the paper and see if the questions are as expected. If this is the case, we are saying look especially at the back page in case there is a question there. Because you might think the questions are done and then behind there are also other questions that demand you to answer them. So please double check that you have seen everything on each paper, and you look especially at the back at the back page in case there is a question that needs to be answered in that question paper. Right, I hope you are following us nicely there. We are grateful for the comments that are running there. We'll be able to say thank you so much to all those that have joined us and those that have tuned in and are following this program. We move on to another point. The next point is take time to read through all the questions carefully. There's a tendency among students out there not to read through all the questions, because if you don't read through the questions, you are likely to misunderstand what they are asking you to do. So take time to read through the questions carefully and start with the question that you think you can do best. Go through the questions in the exam paper and which question can you do the best. It will boost up the confidence to answer the other questions properly. So you check through and boost the confidence by choosing that question that you can really start with. When there are about 15 minutes remaining in the examination, you quickly check if you are running out of time. In all the examination rooms where you'll be, I'm sure there are going to be watches that are going to be stipulated. These are some of the instructions that are obvious, but we want to emphasize for you the need to allocate your time, distribute your time properly so that you are not disadvantaged in any way. So if you think you have run out of time, then try to score as many marks as possible by concentrating on the easier parts, because the easier parts will also add up. You are going to score a lot of marks from the same easier parts that you might have neglected earlier when you started the exam. So the first part of any question that you have not yet attempted is easier because questions keep on building up from the first part of the question, like I indicated earlier on. Here I said you have question part A, and then question part B, and then question part C. You find that if it's a question which is based on one topic, you have question part A, which is a bit easier, and the level of difficulty follows in that direction. So try, when you realize you've run out of time, you try in that direction and see how best you can score a number of marks. Right, we move on to our second point, that is reading the questions carefully. I already talked about it briefly in the reading of the instructions. Why is it important to read the questions carefully? Because if you don't read the questions carefully, you might misunderstand it and you might be answering things that are not being asked. So before you begin answering any questions, ensure that you've read the question carefully. Make sure that you understand what the question is asking you. Some questions are structured and some questions are unstructured. They call for multi-step questions, and for these you have to decide how to tackle the questions, and it would be worthwhile spending a few seconds thinking the questions through. There are questions that are really sequential. The answer you find in, for example, in question part A might be used in question part B and C and D. So you find that if you don't spend much time properly on that question, you don't critically read the question, if you get part A wrong, you get it wrong, it means it will affect all the questions in that, all the questions that follow in that given question. So you need to read and understand the questions before you begin writing. In mathematics, there are some key words that we use, and it's important for you as a candidate to make sure that you understand the key words. And the keywords that we use, some of them would be write down. So when they say write down, or they say can you state, what are you expected to do? It's very, very important, because sometimes they say, can you write down the inverse of this function, or can you state the order of this matrix and the like. So here, when you hear the keywords are write down or state, you do not need to give a lot of explanation. No explanation is needed for an answer. If they say state, you just state it. The order is 2 by 3. For example, if you've been given a matrix A equals 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they ask you, can you state the order of this given matrix? Simply say 2 rows and 2 columns. So in this case, you just say it's a 2 by 2 matrix. You don't need to go on and begin explaining no, this, that, and that, and that, because that is what is expected of you when the question states that. The other keywords that you need to pay particular attention to, like for example, if they say calculate, find, solve, what are you supposed to do when such questioning techniques are being asked in the question? When they say calculate, they expect you to do something. When they say can you find, when they say can you solve, they are expecting you to do something about it. So here you include enough working to make your method clear. So there could be some work that is needed for you. So you include some working here and there so that you can bring out the required answer that they are looking for, instead of just giving maybe the final answer. If the final answer was 2, you just say 2, then that is going to disadvantage you in passing your final exam. The other one, which is the other tip which you need to look out for, is the one which states, can you draw? When they ask you to draw, there is some work that is involved in the drawing. You may need a number of points for you to draw up that diagram, or you need a lot of instruction that has been given. Maybe perhaps in construction, they ask you, can you draw the triangle given the following dimensions? It might be in graphs. Maybe you are asked to draw the graph of a cubic functions, or a graph of under statistics, or also you draw graphs in linear programming and all that stuff. So what do you need to put in place? You need to plot accurately using the graph paper provided and selecting a suitable scale if one is not given. And so most of the graphical work is done on the graph papers. There are rare moments, if not, where you will be required to draw on the answer sheet that you've been given. But graph papers will be given to you. If it means it's paper 1 that you are answering, a graph paper will be scanned on your question paper, and you'll be able to use the same graph paper to do all the drawing. So there's no need of you coming with other papers which you think you are going to make your drawing properly. So we are saying plot accurately using the graph paper provided, and in some instances, though rare, you may not be given a scale. But in most of the questions in paper 2 and even paper 1, a scale will be given which is going to standardize the question, that everyone is expected to come up with the same answer that is required of you as candidates. And where the scale is not given, you need to come up with a suitable scale that is going to fit on the graph paper that you have been given. And most of the times you find that questions that require you to plot, they will even ask you further questions. For example, can you read one or more values from your graph? For example, if it is statistics, they will ask you, can you find the interquartile range, the 50th percentile, and all that stuff comes out after you have drawn the graph and the like. So you need to pay particular attention to such type of questioning so that you don't disadvantage yourself in your exam. Right, so again we move on to another bullet which states, at each and every question, at the end of each question, there is a mark. The number of marks is given at the end of each question or part question. So the number of marks given is very, very important because it shows you how much work is involved in that question. So this gives some indication of how many steps will be required to answer the question, and therefore of what proportion of your time you are supposed to allocate as you answer that question. If a question is 7 marks, it means if a question is 12 marks, if a question has so many parts, it means there's so many procedures that you need to put in place in order for you to get the 12 marks that is being asked. So for example, in paper 2, we have questions that that are given 12 marks. For example, in trigonometry, we also have questions in that direction, linear programming, transformations, to mention but a few, even cubic function themselves, statistics. These are questions, the long question is maybe question 8, and it has got parts, and each part has been given a mark at the end of each and every question. So you need to look out for these parts as you answer your question, so that you may not disadvantage yourself. And the reason why marks are put at the end of each question is, like I said earlier, to help you allocate your time properly as you work out this question in the exam. Okay, so now we all move on again and look at the other point, which is showing your working and checking your answers. We have a problem here too from many students out there who want to be doing their working elsewhere, and they just want to transfer their final answer on the answer script that has been given. For example, if you've been asked to evaluate, for example, 2 to the power, okay, let me say you've been asked to evaluate, for example, 4 raised to power 3 over 2. Okay, here we looked at some question here. We are going to express 4 as a product of its prime factors, and so it's going to be 2 times 2 and raised to power 3 over 2, and so this is going to be 2 to the power 2 and 3 over 2. So you move on like that, then you say 2 and 2 times 3 over 2, then you move on again and say these 2 and these 2 will eliminate, so you have 2 to the power 3, and then you move on 2 to the power 3, the same as 2 times 2 times 3, 2 times 2 times 2. It doesn't mean that it's 2 times 3, but you're multiplying 2 by itself 3 times, so you're going to say this is the same as 2 times 2 as 8 as your answer. So look at what is involved. I've showed the working, and that's how it's supposed to be. So don't just go and write 8. How did you arrive at 8? Already people will be trying to wonder, how did this candidate arrive at 8? So that's why we're saying, even as obvious as the instruction may be, show your working. It's very, very important that you show the steps and how you arrived at the what? At the final answer, than just giving the final answer, then you move on in that direction. Right, I hope we are moving on well together and you're able to follow in. I'm grateful for those that are sending their comments. Please, we are grateful that you are following us on this program and this platform. And as I said earlier, to those that have just joined us, today is my last session in mathematics, and I'm trying to look at examination tips that can help you really score a number of marks in your final paper as you write your final exam. So, I looked at showing your working and checking your answers. State also the units that are required and give your final answer to an appropriate degree of accuracy. So if they say, can you give your answer to 2 decimal places? Meaning, for example, if you have a question that say, excuse me, you have say the answer is, the final answer is 2, 4, excuse me, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then they say, can you leave this to 2 decimal places? You know that this is the first decimal, this is the first decimal, this is the first decimal and second. So you look at, I need to leave this in 2 decimal places. The next digit here is above 5, so it can round off this. So it's going to be 2.46. You've left your answer to 2 decimal places. And that's why we're saying it's important for you not to round off before the final answer and the like. Right, let's continue again looking at the same. Write down the figures on a calculator and then make a suitable rounding off. I've already talked about this. Copy down, even if it looks like too long. There are so many figures, digits that are involved in that answer, in that question, and most of the students out there have problems in writing everything. they want to round off before rounding off at the end of the question. So please make sure that if you are to round off, you ensure that you write down the figures on the calculator as they appear, and then make a suitable rounding off according to the instruction that has been given on the question paper. And we've said you don't need to round the numbers during the calculation, as this will often result in incorrect answer. So those are most important tips that you need to bear in mind as you are preparing for your final exam, which is just around the corner. Right. The other point that we want to look at showing your working is that do not forget to check your answers, especially to see that they are reasonable. There are times when you might be in a hurry, and sometimes you fail to check whether the answer you've written is correct or not. So please take time to ensure that the answer that you have found is correct, and then you move in that direction. You also need to remember that if all that is written down is an answer and that answer is wrong, you gain no marks. So you need really to be very, very careful that you ensure that the answer that you have given is the correct one. Now, once you have finished the paper, if you have any time left, it's important that you check the work you have done. Check the work you have done so that if there are mistakes that you had made earlier on because you were at that pressure, you were nervous when you were starting your final exam, and now you have settled, it's maybe paper 1, 2 hours, or paper 2, 2 hours, 30 minutes, you've now settled, go back and check the answers and ensure that all the answers that you've written are correct so that you can score a number of marks. Now, there are certain things that you need to remember whenever you're answering questions, or if you are to score a number of questions, a number of marks, in your final exams, you remember that marks are given for the following. And it's important for you that you don't only rush to your final answer. For using an appropriate method to answer the question, also you may score some marks for facts found as you work through the question, and even for the final answer. That's why we are discouraging you candidates out there that please, the reason why they say omission of essential working will result in loss of marks, it's because they expect you to tell a story. In mathematics, we also have a mathematical language that we use. So tell a story on each and every part of the question, and then arrive at the final answer, than just writing the answer. If the answer is 2, you say 2, and then at the end of the day, you even say, God bless me, and all that stuff. Please, candidates out there, desist from such, and just tell the story in mathematics and the like. Okay, so we move on to the next point. The next point is on being neat and clear in your working. There are a number of candidates out there that may lose out marks because their presentation is really bad. It is important to plan your work properly as you sit for your final exam. Don't just write for the sake of writing. And sometimes we wonder that candidates may end up even copying the questions in the answer script given. There's no need of that. The question is in the question paper. The answer script, what is needed on the answer script is just to label your questions properly. If it's question 1, you say question 1 part A, or part 2, part 3, and the like. You don't need to copy the questions that are in the question paper and you transfer them on the answer script. That will be a sheer waste of time. So how then should be my presentation of work be? Because a well-presented work will be also very good to follow, and that will enable you to score a number of marks. You must first of all be legible. What do I mean when I say you need to be legible? You don't need to write too small. Your handwriting should be clear. Don't write too small. Don't write things which are too big such that you can't really use the answer script that has been given. So ensure that your work is legible. and clearly set out and easy to follow and understand. People that are looking at your work must be able to follow and understand. Don't just write things haphazardly. Here you've written this, there you've written that, and the like. Make sure that your presentation is very neat and clear. We are also saying that you can use a pencil. You cannot use a pencil in answering, except only when it comes to drawings. You can only use the pencil when it comes to drawings, and use the appropriate equipment that is asked. If they say, can you use a compass to construct this, it means use a compass. Don't use freehand. If they say, can you use freehand, don't use the ruler and all that aspect to answer your question. Just use freehand to come up with what is expected of you. Now, when it comes to drawings, please ensure that all your drawings are neat and graphs are labeled nicely. Don't just draw for the sake of drawing. No, they will be able to understand that I was in an exam, I had a lot of pressure, so whatever I'm going to come up with, it's up to them, they'll be able to see. No, we are saying it's very, very important for you to score good marks, and so you need to ensure that your drawings are neat. And when you draw, ensure that the graphs are labeled, because there will be some parts that will follow. If it's the graph of a cubic function, for example, if I have an x, a Cartesian plane like this is x and O, and this is y, and I've been asked to draw the graph of a cubic function, for example, I'm going to say, okay, it's coming like this, it's coming like that. Then I have to give the name, maybe y equals x cubed and blah blah, it continues like that. You label the graph that you have drawn. It's very, very important. For example, if you are been asked to come up with a graph in the statistics, you also draw it properly, and for example, you can say it's coming something like this, like that, nicely, and you can label the parts. If they say, can you find the 50th percentile, and here you have 100, for example, and so you know the 50th percentile is half of 100, so you draw it like this, and this is going to be our 50, and then go down there to make the readings. That is what you label. This is, 50th percentile is somewhere here, and I need to get the reading from the x-axis here, or from the horizontal axis, if it's not the x-axis, depending on what has been given. So you find that those that are looking at your work are going to be interested to look at the steps that you are following in doing everything. That's why we are emphasizing here to say, ensure that drawings are neat and graphs are well labeled. It's very, very important. Right, so we move on to another point. And maybe before we go to the next point, we are going to break for 2 minutes. Please don't go away. Please tag your friends and families so that they can stay tuned. We are grateful for the comments that are coming from all those that are tuned in. Please let them keep coming so that we can be encouraged, and stay tuned as I come back in 2 minutes' time. Thank you.
Do you expect more from your internet service? Maybe it's time to switch to MTN's 4G internet. Introducing the next level in high-performance mobile network technology, taking your home or office internet experience to a whole new level while keeping it simple. Get to work by the click of a button or manage your team from miles away. Browse faster, download multiple files, and stream videos quicker with no limits. Get it all done with MTN's 4G internet. So don't let your internet slow you down. Stay online in real time all the time. Get your MTN 4G SIM today and find your nearest 4G zone to enjoy maximum performance of your 4G enabled device. MTN, everywhere you go.
I told the bus driver that I work hard for my money, so it better gets to Chipata.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I told him.
Yeah.
Whether drama is no, or Zambili
Tituma. And he kept trying to tell us something, but I was like, Ukagamba, Tilo.
Cause cash money yeve across Zambia
Tituma. Ati? At Basi and Kuchpat. He end up South Africa. Hello, what?
Run, K-Star, run! You still got the bus.
Sending money doesn't have to be this dramatic. Open an MTN mobile money account today and send money to friends and loved ones across Zambia instantly. Dial *303# to send money with MTN, Zambia's #1 network. With MTN mobile money, Tituma.
MTN, everywhere you go.
Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Anton Samanenga. Again, I'm here to help you prepare for your final exam. I'm very excited to be on this platform and I hope you are following us and you are also encouraged and you're making a difference as you prepare for your final exams. Like I said earlier to those that joined us earlier, this is my last session in mathematics, and as my last session, I'm today presenting on the examination tips that can help you score a number good marks in your final exams, which is just around the corner. So we were looking at examination tips and we're looking at the point number 4 that I alluded to earlier, and we looked at being neat and clear in your writing. Now, I said all the diagrams or the drawings must be neat and clearly labeled, and there are moments sometimes when you begin answering, you answer your question and the like, then you realize that the answer at the end of the day is not correct. Even if you know the final answer is wrong, please do not erase your entire work because you may get partial credit for using the correct procedure. So it's important that your presentation does not look very dirty. Sometimes even the cancellation, maybe I can talk about this. You may have, for example, your work. You were asked, for example, to solve the equation. For example, if they say, solve the equation maybe 2x minus 1 equals 3, and then you know that you move on in this direction. This implies that 2x, you're supposed to transpose this -1 to the other side, so we're going to have 3 plus 1, and then you move on to say this is going to be 2x equals 3 plus 1. You have your 4 there, and then you say we are going to divide throughout by 2, also by 2, and then we say x is going to be 2 into 4, then you find 2. But there are some times when because you're in an exam and you have so much pressure, instead of writing 2, you end up writing 4, and then you decide to delete everything, and even the deleting aspect is in such a way that it's not neat at all. Everything is all dirty and the like. If you are to cancel your work, you've decided to cancel your work, just cancel it with one single straight line. And sometimes we have pupils who are most candidates out there have got a tendency of writing cancelled. Remember the cancelled that you are writing on that question. You are spending much time instead of using that time to answer other questions. And some will decorate the cancelling as if it's one of the answers. They will decorate it so much they will go around to buy time, maybe because they have not prepared adequately for the final exam. You just need a straight line to cancel your work and move on in that direction. Right, so that's why we are saying that even if you know the answer is wrong, please do not erase your entire work, and just simply, if you are to erase, just do it with a straight line. One line is enough so that everything is clear and those that are looking at your work can easily follow what you are doing. Right, I come now to the presentation of your work. Very, very important. Partially, I talked about it earlier when I just started on reading instructions, the importance of reading instructions. How should your work be presented? It's very, very important that most of the candidates out there do not mind about the presentation of their work, and that really affects them so much in the final exam. Even if they were to score a number of marks in that paper, they end up scoring very few marks because their presentation of work is not properly done. So present your working carefully and concisely vertically. What do we mean? when you are presenting, this is your answer script. If they say, let me repeat once more, let me repeat to say, if they say, can you solve the question? You look at the way I'm going to present it. Solve, for example, again, 2x minus 1 equals maybe 5, in this case. How are you going to present it? We've said you present your work vertically and not horizontally. So I'm going to show you the wrong way of presenting your work and the correct way of presenting your work. The wrong way is this one. You have, let me say the wrong way now here. You have the wrong way. I want to show you the wrong way of doing things, of presenting your work. You have, okay, let's say 2x minus 1 equals 5. Then you continue to say 2x equals 5 plus 1. Then you continue also to say 2x equals 6. Then you continue again. Now you come here to say 2x equals 6 over, or not even there again. You come here to say 2x equals now 6 over 2, and over 2 because they're dividing throughout by 2, and 2 there, and then you say x equals 3. This is a wrong way of presenting your work because the work hasn't been presented vertically, but you are presenting your work horizontally. So what we are saying here is you present your work vertically. So how do we present the work vertically? Okay, so just a minute here. Well, let me show you the right way of presenting your work so that those that are looking at your working are able to appreciate the story that you are telling. For example, the same question, can you solve? They're saying solve 2x minus 1 equals 5. Then you are going to say this implies that 2x minus 1 equals 5. To present it vertically means you are going into the next line. So you say 2x equals 5 plus 1. And again you say 2x equals 6. Then, 2x. Then you divide by 2 throughout. Also by 2 there. Then you have x equals 2 into 6. You have your 3. And then underline your correct answer. That is the best way, that's a proper way. So you can see the mistakes that we may make in the final exams in terms of your presentation of your work. And again, it's very, very important that as you write your final exam, there are candidates out there that have a tendency of dividing the page into 2 equal parts. That is not encouraged in your final exam. So, or even in the test that you are writing in school, in your test class, even how you present, some they do it. No, if I'm not going to divide the page into 2 parts, my book is going to finish fast, so I'm going to. No, we are saying here, we're not encouraging that. There are people that have got a tendency of, candidates that have a tendency of, this is A, they work out, and then again here they say, this is B. And then they draw a line here. They draw a line like that. And then they begin answering here. They do their answering. They also do their answering. That is not encouraged in the final exam. Even if there is a space that has remained here, there is some space that has remained here, please don't use it for your working. Just ensure that your work is done vertically and not horizontally. So that's why we're saying write down, present your work carefully and concisely vertically. Do not divide the page when you're working out the solutions to the questions, and let everything flow. You tell a story because mathematics is sequential and it's hierarchical. So when you're doing that, tell that story so that when people are looking at your work, they'll be very impressed with your presentations. Write down the calculations you are going to make. It's very important that you write down the calculation you are going to make. If you are untidy and disorganized, you might misread some of your own work. It's very true that if your paper or you don't plan properly your page on how you're going to write, you find that you even also get mixed up. You don't know where part A of the question 1 is going to be and part 2. because everything is presented haphazardly and you cannot even follow yourself. Now, if you yourself cannot follow and cannot even read your own handwriting, how about those that do not even know how you write and how you came up with those concepts? So please bring out these ideas. They should be flowing in order for you to score good marks in your final paper. Right, so we move on to another question, another bullet that is going to help us prepare for the final exams. Okay, one other point that we cannot ignore is the common saying, practice makes perfect. We've seen people doing practices even when they're attending weddings. You say, no, we are going for rehearsals because they just want on that day things to come out as expected and everyone should be happy. Some will be able to memorize, mime the songs. They'll be able to practice every now and then. The same even with mathematics. Without practicing, you cannot become a better mathematician. There is need for you to practice, and the more you practice, the more understanding, or you assimilate the work, it becomes part of you. So you have pushed your work in the permanent memory. Because if you don't practice, you may learn a concept today, you get it right in class, you stop practicing, come a test or an exam, the same question that you answered correctly in a class exercise, you fail to answer it in the final exams. And we have seen pupils crying out there to say, I don't know for mathematics. In class, I do very well, but when it comes to a test or an exam, I always fail. Maybe it's just something that is in our family because my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, even my brothers also have problems in mathematics. So you start comforting yourself in that way. It's not really that. You just need to practice. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect, so you need to practice. Practice all aspects of manipulative algebra, solving equations, rearranging formulas, expanding brackets, factorizing. The list is endless. Come up with your study timetable. What are you going to do on a daily basis? What am I going to practice on? Don't only practice those topics that you like so much, because there's a tendency of some candidates out there who just want to practice the topics that they love so much and they don't want to practice these other topics. It's not supposed to be that case. So make sure that you practice a number of questions across the syllabus, because when the examinations are set, they are set in accordance with your syllabus. So it's very important that even when you are in school, you inquire from your teachers about the syllabus and how many topics are there, so that you can practice across the syllabus. Practice answering questions that ask for an explanation. It's also important. Some questions will ask you to explain why the answer is like that. So when you do not understand, you've just memorized questions or answers, you will fail to give an explanation. And such questions, they are testing understanding. Does this candidate understand what he or she is doing? And if you can understand, the understanding is seen on your explanation of the concept or the idea behind that question. So practice answering questions that ask for an explanation, and your answers should be concise, and you can use even mathematical terms where appropriate. Earlier on, I alluded to some of the mathematical terms that can be used: evaluate, simplify, factorize, solve, and all that. So use mathematical terms. It's important that this is a mathematics paper, and even as you write, you need to use the mathematical terms in order for you to be able to score quite a number of marks in your exam. Practice answering questions with more than one step to the answer. Don't just practice those simple questions that from the first part next is to your answer. Practice questions with more than one step before you reach the final answer. It's very, very also important to do that. Finding the radius of a sphere, for example, with the same volume as a given cone. Yesterday we looked at finding the volume of a first term, you can see that we had to follow a number of steps before we reach at the final answer. So it's important, even you as a candidate, to practice that. And when you practice, you internalize the content, you make it become part of you, you've assimilated it, and at any point you are asked to do such a particular question, you'll be able to bring out the right concept because it has become part of you. What we are saying no here to is that do not spend time memorizing things that you do not understand. If you do not understand certain things, ask your friends, ask the teachers out there. They are going to help you understand and do things in accordance to the way they are supposed to do. The problem with memorizing, or what we call rote learning, is once a question is twisted in an exam, you experience a blow and you say, I've never learned about this. Why? It's because you are spending much time on just memorizing concepts instead of understanding them. Because when you understand them, you can even apply them in real life situation. So it's very, very, very important that you take note of that, colleagues out there. Make sure you can use your calculator efficiently and to practice before the examination. We are saying here, there is a tendency of candidates out there not to use their own calculators. Please begin getting acquainted to your own calculator. Don't go ask for a different make of a calculator when you are just going into an exam room. You may not understand the functions of that calculator, and that will cost you in your final exam. So ensure that if you are writing a calculator version paper, by now, you should be able to put in place your calculator that you are used to, all the functions, you ensure that they are working, you are able to know the mode if you are using radians or degrees, you are able to know which mode or radian I'm using. Otherwise, you get disappointed that once you're in an exam room, you get this calculator from your friend elsewhere. Hey, can you help me with this calculator? They help you, you don't even understand how it is made, you've not read the manual, and so when you go into an exam room there, you just black out because the calculator is not just performing to expectation. So make sure you can use your calculator efficiently. And if you use your calculator efficiently, it is just one of those gadgets or instruments that can help you work out a question that may not need you to do it without questions. And when you are revising papers, I must mention it here to say, revise papers from 2016 to date, as these covers the revised curriculum. I must put it into record here to say the revised curriculum was in effect starting from 2016. So don't revise questions starting from 2002, or I'm now revising questions from 1989. I'm now revising questions from 1918 maths. You might be out of context. It's important. That's why I said you need to ask for your syllabus from your teachers. Look at the question papers, the past papers. How are they written and the like, so, and you move on in that direction. Okay, so 2016 to where we are, both the General Certificate of Education, which is written in July and August, and the other one at the end of the year, November, December, they carry the same content, and the weight and the standard is the same. There is no difference to say the General Certificate of Education paper is simpler and the like. The standards is just simply the same. Now, we are still talking about practicing. Practice makes perfect. So now, what should you put in place when you are practicing? When practicing, try to solve the problem on your own first, then look at the answer or seek help if you are having trouble. So try to look at the question. Do it on your own first and see how far you can go. And when you see you get stuck, that's when you can look at the solution. There are some books that have solutions and the way in which they arrived at that answer. Please, yes, don't just entirely depend on the book, but you can try as much as possible to see how best you can do it in your own way. And that's why yesterday when I was trying to talk to you on the some formulas. There are so many formulas that you need to understand or memorize, if I may put it. But it's not all that important to memorize formulas. Sometimes you may forget these formulas, but what is important is, do I understand? What should I do if I'm differentiating? What should I do if I'm integrating? What am I expected to do if I'm solving a quadratic equation? All that stuff need to be put in place as you work out. So practice, solve problems on your own first, and then look at the answer, or seek help if you are having trouble. Don't feel shy to ask. There's a tendency of candidates out there, if I go and ask him or her, they will think they are very important like myself and the like. So even when you are stuck, you don't know how to go about it, you just stick to your own ideas, and then you end up getting wrong answers altogether. It's the exam, your final exam you are writing. You cannot afford to make any mistake. When you get stuck, go to the friend that you feel they can help you. Don't be ashamed you are going to be laughed at. We all make mistakes, and we are all learning, and there's no one who knows everything. So it's important that you go out there, ask your teachers, ask your friends who can explain to you so that you understand these concepts properly. Excuse me. And also, work on practicing problems for each topic, ranging in levels of difficulty. I earlier on alluded to the fact that some concepts, like for example, questions that have got parts, question 1A, B, C, D, the idea in which they flow in such a way that the level of complexity of difficulty is from what I know, and it keeps on becoming complex here and there and not. So you need to also practice such questions. You work on practicing problems for each topic, ranging in levels of difficulty. That will really help you also to have a clear understanding of what the question is saying and what you are being asked to do. What else do you need to put in place whenever you are preparing for your final exam? You can mix up the order of the questions from various topics when you are reviewing or revising. Write a number of questions from this topic, mix them, then sit on your table, see how you can work out and answer all those questions nicely. This helps you to remember a number of concepts at once and how you can apply them. So you will learn to use a specific method formula for that particular question that has been asked. So it's very, very important, colleagues or friends out there, that when you are revising, you put certain things in place in this way. It's also important to make up a sheet with all the formulas you need to know, so that now here I'm not encouraging the aspect of memorizing. I want you to understand. For example, if you are dealing with a quadratic formula, the quadratic formula states that x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac and everything over 2a. Yeah, there are a number of times when we just concentrate at knowing this or memorizing this. Now, this time around, when you check in your question paper, some of the formulas are being typed, they are part and parcel of the question paper. But we spend much time in memorizing the quadratic formula and maybe not even spending much time to find out how did they come about this. For example, how did they come about the quadratic formula? You simply understand that a quadratic equation is of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, and if you solve this equation by complete of square method, you are going to arrive at the quadratic formula that is there. Though they will not ask you to derive at this level, they will not ask you to derive the quadratic formula, but you can take it upon yourself to understand where did it come from. In an event you forget this formula, but lucky you now that the examination paper has the formulas which have been typed or printed, and they are part and parcel. Not all formulas, of course. Other formulas, you need to understand them. Don't memorize, please. So I'm trying to discourage all of you out there not to dwell so much on memorizing for the sake of passing an exam, because the content in mathematics, you need it where you are going. You pass mathematics with flying colors. Maybe you get a distinction at that particular time. Go to the university, college of your own choice. They put you together with those that had really done their work and they did a good work. You find that your one is not really turning to the ones of others. And that is not really good, because it questions your integrity of passing your final exam. So please make a sheet with the formulas. Try to understand how they came about, so that in an event you forget, you'll be able to derive them yourself and use them. So it's very, very important, colleagues out there, that as you prepare for your final exam, you need really to be on top of things. Sometimes you become nervous when you are entering into an exam. It is very normal to become nervous, but you shouldn't be nervous for a long period of time. The exam period, the exam is a 30 minute, 2 hours, then the whole 1 hour, 30 minutes, you are nervous. In an exam, you are shaking. When will you settle to answer the questions? Because time is ticking and no extra time is added to those that are nervous. You say, "Sir, madam, I'm sorry, please add 30 minutes or 40 minutes because I didn't settle, I was nervous." You need to settle the platform, the same platform for all of you to write. It's a final exam and it's a national exam. The standard must be the same. So colleagues out there, these are some of the few examination tips that I thought would be very, very important for you to take into consideration as you prepare for your mathematics. It's also important that when you are going for an exam, you have enough rest. If you're writing tomorrow, don't spend the whole night studying up to 06 hours. Then you wake up, your mind will be tired. You go and sit in an exam room, the brain wants to rest. And it's 2 hours, 30 minutes. You find that you look at this question because the mind and the brain is tired. You can't even remember anything. So have enough rest. Go to bed early. Prepare well in advance. There's a saying that goes, "Do not fatten the cow on the market day." When you know, oh, tomorrow we are writing maths paper 1. Today we are not going to sleep. We'll spend the whole day. You even put a bucket or a dish of water, you step in the water. Know those theorems to say, no, we don't want to sleep. They're not really going to help you much. So begin preparing now, and not only on that day. Keep on revising, keep on practicing, and then there you go. It will be boom, and you pass mathematics with flying colors. So once more, it has been myself, Anton Samanenga, teacher of mathematics, and it's been my pleasure. I've been with you from Monday since the program was launched, and I hope the time we have spent together in the revision exercise, though short, it would have made I think it has made a very big difference as you prepare for your final exams. So thank you so much for the running comments from all of you. I cannot really just mention the names of all those that have dropped the comment, but we appreciate your comments and we want you to stay on for other subjects that are coming in sciences and English that have been outlined. So for mathematics, on behalf of my colleague Kasonde, who was also here yesterday, I want to say thank you so much for your support, and please continue watching MTN Teleschool, and bye-bye for now.
Tiende pamoja ni mtima umo. 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 Tiende pamoja ni mtima